Frequency, Episode 8, Interference. Now, this episode I thought was really interesting because as much as it focused on, like, basically the whole series, trying to catch the Nightingale Killer, I think it had a lot of really good content as far as the relationship stuff between the characters, both past and present. And I really enjoyed that because it was throwing like a bunch of stuff into this episode. And I really, especially with Raimy, I think, because it's like she had this moment where I think it was like 2 episodes ago. It's like she decided to move on from the former timeline, despite, of course, wanting to be with the man that she knew she was going to end up marrying. She wants to be with him still, but she decided, all right, I seem crazy. I'm going to let him have his life in this timeline. Once everything's fixed, go back to it. And my thing was like, all right, well, she decided to move on, but what if she actually falls for this new guy, and then they do fix the timeline, and she lost both of them in a sense. So how is that going to affect her? And then this episode shows up, and so she's at her house. Gordo is there, and he's playing. Okay, so I have to mention this as a super nerd. It kind of made me mad because they do this in television all the time. But they were playing Gears of War. Gears of War is not on the PlayStation. There's no version of Gears of War that you can play on a PlayStation. So they're using like PlayStation controllers. And I knew it was Gears of War even when they didn't focus on it, because when she got up to answer the door, I'm like, what game is that? Like, what is he playing over there? And I could see it at the top. I played Gears of War, so I knew the gun was at the top. I was like, that's Gears of War. He had a PlayStation controller. And I had a crazy nerd moment. It always makes me mad when I see that on TV. It's like, no one plays games. It is not on PlayStation. So there's a random nerd moment for you. But they were playing Gears of War, and I'm like, they definitely aren't playing it. I also love the fact that they couldn't say the name, because it's like, we don't want to say the name because then we'd have to pay him for it. It's like, is that? It's like, yeah, it is. I was like, that's kind of funny, just to avoid actually saying the name of the game. But they showed it, and I was like, oh, it's PlayStation controllers, huh? That's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's just not going to happen. It's not a normal situation. So I had to point that out. Random nerd moment. But anyway, the guy shows up, the cop, and so Raymy's like, oh, I forgot that we were having like date night and stuff, but he and Gordo end up together, which Gordo had a hilarious moment when he's like, hey, I'm Gordo, I'm Raymy's non-sexual life partner. I thought that was a hilarious line. It was probably my favorite line in the whole episode because it made me laugh. But then, they're playing the game and stuff, and she's like, okay, well, somebody's at the door, let's see what's going on. And it ends up being her former fiance. I never really know how to explain his position at this point. So she ends up, taking him back home because of course, he's drunk and stuff, and they kiss. And so they end up going up into his apartment, and she finds the ring, just like in the other timeline. And I didn't think that that's what was going to happen, but he mentioned, like, I have, and then he stopped, and I was like, well, obviously he has a girlfriend. In the first episode, when the timeline was changed, she went to that dinner, and then he's like, I have no idea who you are and stuff like that, but I'm like, he's having dinner with his parents. He probably is doing the same thing that he was going to do, but with a different person. So he has a girlfriend and someone that is important to him if they're meeting his parents. So it was like, all right, he has someone important to him, of course. And then she finds the ring, and she kind of decides to leave him alone, but we get the end of the episode, and he comes back to her completely sober this time, and they make out and stuff, and they probably do it because it was the end of the episode. It always goes into they had sex. So I don't know how that's gonna play out, but it's one of the rare situations where I'm like, I'm actually interested to see where the relationship stuff goes in this series, because there's the idea that once they change the timeline back, they save her mom, everything goes back to the way that it was. It's plain and simple, like that's all you have to do. So it's just very interesting. It's like, okay, well, how is this gonna work out? So I'm oddly excited to see how they play this relationship in the series. But I thought that was a good part of the episode. And then, of course, the stuff with Frank I thought was pretty entertaining as well, where he has to go through, trying to get his wife back, or ex-wife. So he's dealing with that, and then he finds out that the baseball coach is coming over, things like that, and that she would leave to go to his place. Things, certain facts. The guy mentioned when he pulled up to the cops, and he's like, don't shoot the messenger and stuff like that. So they have an argument and stuff like that, but ultimately they're able to work it out. And it's like, basically, we both love our daughter. Let's let's make her happy. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of where they end. So they're still on odd terms, but they at least come to an agreement. They aren't like just hating each other at this point and just mad. So he's working on it, and he talks with Raimi, in the future, and he's like, I won her over before, and it took me like 4 mixtapes and something else. I forgot what he said, but it took mixtapes and stuff. I did it once. I'll do it again. So he's doing everything he can to try to win her back, and then at the same time, of course, they're both working the Nightingale case, working different leads, which that I thought was actually pretty fun in this episode because they were both working. Yeah, obviously it's the same case. That's all they're ever doing, but they're working like very different sides of it. I felt like they had like one common element with the parents, and then after that, it was like they both kind of branched off from there. Like so, um, Frank ended up going to basically like the first victim's last boyfriend because it's like, oh, did you do this and stuff like that? Because he could be the Nightingale killer. And then Raimi went to a totally different person, and she had like I forgot exactly what the guy's position was at the beginning of the episode, but they go to him, then they go to the guy that's in the wheelchair, and he tells them the story about this girl Megan, and I liked the way it was playing out. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. They both got like different people. They're getting different parts of the story. They're getting information like how did this play out, how did that play out, and then it all kind of comes together with this Megan story where they each get a different version of it. So the guy in the wheelchair was like, there's I forgot what he called her, but it was like some like creepy story. And it's like, yeah, it happened like the year before. Like I didn't know her, but that's the story, and no one ever heard from her ever again. And then Frank gets to the story like, yeah, she had like this. There's this girl Megan that she was trying to help, and so he reads the journal, and that's how they find out who Megan is. But they don't have a last name. They don't know how else to get in touch with her or anything like that. And we find out that Megan is this woman that's actually inside of the asylum. And as it goes along, it's like, okay, so she's in the asylum. There's something going on with her, of course. And then we get the ending sequence where somehow the camp counselor guy or whoever he was, he, at least potentially, I mean, that's the way they're making it seem like he's definitely the Nightingale killer because that's just the way they make it seem. He could just be, once again, another lead that ends up just being a crazy dude. So we don't really know. And we still have the other storyline with the guy in jail who keeps killing everybody, but he says he can talk to his future self. So I don't know if this is going to be like, this guy is truly the Nightingale killer, or, it's just another thing that they end up, solving an issue about. But that's kind of how they made it seem. It was like Megan was like the big lead, and, they have like the pictures and stuff that were taken, and then Megan is the person where it's like, oh, I just wanted him to leave us alone. So it was more than one person. Like she was doing that either for friends or she was doing it for family. And I believe she said I just wanted him to leave us alone. I don't think she specifically says like my family or anything like that. So it's still up in the air. That's just how they make it seem like that guy is definitely the Nightingale killer. But considering everything they've gone through, it's hard to be like, oh, that's totally the guy. It's probably just going to be another lead that gets them to the actual Nightingale killer. But this is the biggest thing they've got so far. She does leave her name, so they have the ending sequence where where the other detective, she puts the paper down and it just has Megan on it and no information. So of course that's going to lead Raimi to the asylum in the next episode, and we'll just see how that plays out. I mean, this guy, and I was really curious because when he showed up at the end, it made me curious as to what role he plays. Like, what is he saying to the doctor as far as who he is? Like, is he saying that he's related to her? Is he just the guy that took her in there? Because, of course, he tortured her basically into insanity, so it kind of worked, and that's why she was in there forever. So, it's just like, what lie is he telling that has him as, like, the caretaker of this woman, even though, of course, she's, like, completely distraught when he's around. Like, he was just looking at her, and she was, like, freaking out during that ending sequence. So it just has me curious how this is going to play out, if he's really going to be the Nightingale killer just because of how things have gone before. So I hope that's the case, and we actually find this guy, and that's how they end up doing it. But who knows? We just have to wait and see. Not sure how many episodes we have left. I know this is very unfortunate, but this series did not get like a full season order, so it didn't get like a back order of episodes. So hopefully it ends, and maybe this will be the guy. Maybe that's why this will just actually be it. but it didn't get a full season back order. There's another show, I think it was the show about like Last Days to Live or whatever it's called. I never watched it, but neither of those shows got like complete season orders. So I have no idea how many episodes we should be expecting for this show or how it's gonna happen. But I'm assuming the we aren't gonna be getting a season 2 of this show. After I read that, I was like, oh well, they didn't even order a full season. They most likely won't be ordering a season 2 for this series, which is really unfortunate. I've enjoyed the series. I really like Peyton List because she was in the Tomorrow People, which was also canceled. So hopefully it does magically get a bunch of ratings and it continues on. But I still enjoyed this episode. Hopefully we do have at least quite a few more episodes and they're able to do, since they know that it didn't get a back order, hopefully they'll just do it as like a one season sort of thing and they'll just complete the storyline and just make it work that way and they won't end it on a cliffhanger. So that's my hope, but ultimately who knows, we just have to wait and see. But I do want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below, let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and I actually want to know how you guys think Raimy is going to be able to get this woman to tell her the truth. It's clear that it's not as simple as, hey, what's happening, because in the promo Megan isn't even in the asylum anymore. She was at like just some random phone. So I'm assuming the guy decided to, maybe he was like, oh, I'll take her to another place or whatever. So he was like, all right, let me get her out of here before she starts blabbing. I got to kill her. So I feel like that's what it is in the next episode. It's kind of a sort of a race against time sort of thing. So based on the promo, it was hard to say if Megan escaped from him because she was on her own, and then they showed it when Raimy showed up, to the phone. It was just hanging, so she didn't even have time to like hang up the phone. It was just like dangling off the wire. So it's hard to say if she's with the guy, like he already has her, or if she like completely escaped from the asylum and she's just flat out on the run now. But I'm excited to see what they do in this next episode. Like I said, I want to know your predictions for how Raimy is gonna eventually get the information from her, and how she's going to end up finding her by the end of the episode, and what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.